Okay, welcome to our PolarTREC Informational webinar for 2013. Today is September 3rd. Hard to believe that it suddenly became September, but I'm Janet Warden. I'm the Principal Investigator for PolarTREC, and with me today hosting this webinar is Sarah Bartholow. We work together on PolarTREC, all things PolarTREC, I should say. For today's webinar, just a few things we want to go over before we actually get to the agenda. One of them is how to use this platform. Thank you for tolerant of Blackboard Collaborate and the instructions, and for those that signed in early, thank you for doing so. This is a platform that we use a lot for both training purposes as well as how we communicate events, what's happening in polar science to the public. We call them webinars. And the center of your screen is where the content should be showing up. We will not be using any videos, so if we were, there's a little box where people's heads would show up, or you could see Sarah and myself chatting about this, but today it's just audio. We also have a list of participants. You can see who's joining us. Some people might be just joining us through the phone and not virtually, so of course their names wouldn't show up there. You can send messages or ask questions in the chat area. The chat area is usually on the bottom, and there's a white space. You can type your question in there, your comment, and hit enter, and it goes to everybody in the room. You can also use the pull down menu and just send or chat to a specific person. This event is being archived, so we'll send out the link at the end. It's being recorded. If you've joined us by phone, we can get a lot of background noise, so please recognize that there might be noise in your behind you, and do *6 to mute your sound and *6 to unmute your phone, or you can use the mute button. If you have a question as we go along and you don't want to type it in the chat and we have to call on you, you can click on the little hand icon above the list of participants, and that lets us know you have a question. And I think that's it for Blackboard Collaborate at the moment. So there are a couple ways to ask questions. I just mentioned typing your question in the chat box, and then I also mentioned raising your hand button. We'll have time at the end of this presentation for additional questions. We try to go through everybody's registration and put in the questions that weren't addressed through our regular presentation. So hopefully we'll get to everything. This is going to be a lot of talking at you. I apologize for that. That's not usually how, it doesn't make a very fun webinar, but we hope that you'll get a lot of information out of it, and then feel free again to email Sarah and myself with anything else or ask questions at the end. So what are we going to cover? A lot. We have a lot to cover in the next hour. And there is a PDF that got sent out to all the registered people so far of all these slides too, so you can follow along there. So we're going to cover what is ARCUS, what is PolarTREC. We're going to talk about our goals and the different elements of PolarTREC, a little bit about the impacts and benefits. We have both researchers and teachers that are joining this webinar today, so we're going to give those perspectives. We'll talk about the application process, which is probably what most of you have joined this webinar for, to hear more about that. And we're also going to talk about what happens if you're selected and what happens if you're not selected, and again, try to get to those questions that you may have. So with that, we'll get started on this whole bit of information. So what is ARCUS? ARCUS is a nonprofit that's based in Fairbanks, Alaska. It stands for Arctic Research Consortium of the United States. We're a member-based organization. We have members are typically universities or institutions with some Arctic research component, and they're based all across the globe, so we're international, even though we're based here in Alaska. And we work with the institution and Arctic scientists to help them be better at communicating science to the public, as well as helping them work together as scientists, and so that they can kind of bring some cohesiveness to their science and make sure they all are working together. Along with what is ARCIS, ARCIS has many programs, and one of the programs that they administer, many activities that we do, I should say, one of the things we do is we have a grant by the National Science Foundation for PolarTREC. And PolarTREC is administered or hosted by ARCIS. And that, a lot of times people think PolarTREC is a standalone. It's a standalone program, but it has a whole bunch of people and a whole organization behind it that support it. ARCIS has a board of directors, and they are the ones that help provide some oversight to ARCIS activities, including PolarTREC. On this slide about ARCIS and PolarTREC, it just has a few little details about it, but one of the important ones, and also in the next little slide about funding history, is to know that we've been funded for PolarTREC or PolarTREC-like activities for quite some time. This is not new to us. It's come to our world in a variety of ways and shapes and forms, and been tweaked and modified to meet the demands of professional development of teachers and also the needs of polar scientists. We started off in 2004, and even before that there were some iterations of teacher working with scientists before that. But I think the important thing you should know about PolarTREC right now is that we are currently in our last year of funding. It ends in March 2014, and we resubmitted a proposal to the National Science Foundation to get funding, but it's still pending. There isn't any guarantee that this program is going to happen. So what you are applying to is a program that could be potentially funded. So you just need to know that, and we'll obviously keep everybody that's applying, both researchers and teachers, well informed of our funding status and let you know. But some parts of our program, like the select piece and getting projects and things lined out for the upcoming year, need to happen now in the cycle of activities and not later. So that's why we're hosting an open application period right now, and we'll continue to go through that process until we're pretty sure which direction we'll go. Sarah's pushed out a slide that just gives you a little overview of the staff involved. Like I said, Sarah and myself are the primary ones. We work with a web guy. We have an executive director. Zeb Pauley is our systems person, and we have his brother Joed, who does video work with us as well. And of course there's other people involved at ARCIS, but Sarah and I are primarily work together on all activities. Sorry about that. My dog keeps coming in and out of the bedroom, and I'm trying to get her to stay out. So PolarTREC, as I said before, is teachers and researchers exploring and collaborating. It is professional development for teachers, and we focus primarily, I know this is a big question with a lot of people, we focus primarily on K through 12 teachers, and they're paired with researchers in a research experience. There are some exceptions to this, and we'll cover some of that along the way. And this is more than just a observation of the program. I'll go into some of the details here in a moment. This is a hands-on learning experience. Our goal is for you to work with the research team and learn all sorts of cool things, and hopefully transform what you do with science in your classroom, or if you're a researcher, transform you in how you, what you see in science education and how you work with the teaching community. Okay. So the next little piece is our goals and our project elements. So right off the top is our overall goal for PolarTREC, and is basically to advance polar science education. And how we do that is by improving teacher content knowledge, by instructional practices. Like I said, we want to transform how you teach science in the classroom. We also want to increase your knowledge and use of science and engineering, bring that into the classroom. We want teachers to develop leadership skills and feel confident about those skills, as well as develop long-term relationships, professional relationships between teachers and researchers across the globe. And then another piece of our work is to also increase researchers' understanding of what is happening in the K-12 education, and so that researchers feel more comfortable adding education into side-by-side with science work. And of course, the ultimate goal is, or the ultimate piece is to have really rich outreach experiences, products that can go to all sorts of different people around the globe, students and the public, and across all disciplines. So we're pretty ambitious. We've got one big goal, but we got a lot of things underneath it, and we try to tackle it in a variety of ways. And how we do that is through this little model. We call it the PolarTREC model. And I'm just going to interrupt for a moment that if there's a major question, Sarah, let me know and interrupt me along the way because I'm not reading chat right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sending out the PDF to a few people and responding to questions. If it's a question that we'll get to at the end, I will just let people know that and get to it when we have our question and answers.
Okay, yep, and when we get to that point too, if you, I'll also glance through what's been written in chat when we have a break here. Okay, so like I said, this could be me talking to you about a lot of different things. So, and a lot of this is on the web, so some of it might be familiar as well if you've done any checking on the internet. So this model is how we look at PolarTREC. So essential to our program is obviously the research experience where you go out into the field. But working along with that and in conjunction with that is the hands-on field experience, but we also provide you tools and things so that you can share this experience with others, both the classrooms and the public. And then we just don't leave it at that. We've built in a lot of activities to help you not only synthesize the experience and share the experience, but also support you both before, during, and after the experience. So we'll get into some of the specifics about that. But I guess what we really want you to know is that when you get selected for this professional development experience, it's really comprehensive. It's not just one piece or one part. It's meant to be a holistic approach to professional development. And we integrated best practices in designing our program as well. So some of the key activities that we have to kind of pull our model together here is you might have read or seen something about an orientation. We have an orientation that is moving along, and this year it's scheduled for late February. We even have the date, which we can look up here in a little bit. But this one-week orientation, we bring all the teachers that have been selected to the program to Fairbanks, Alaska. You get to experience Fairbanks in the winter. There's nothing better than that, trust me. And we go over technology, all of our program requirements. You get to hear from some of the scientists, polar scientists, about different science research going on. And it's just it's a good team building, program building exercise. And we bring mentor teachers as well, alumni that have had these experiences to share what they have done with this PD. In addition to that, orientation, you are just starting our comprehensive selection process by coming to this webinar. It's one little piece that we have to let you know what we expect and what we are looking for. We have we'll go into more details about the whole application process a little bit later, but it's very comprehensive and it utilizes a selection committee to, as well as the researchers make the final selections for their teachers. So that's all part of the selection process. So the researchers decide who will go out in the field with them. That's an important piece. We work very closely with logistics providers that the National Science Foundation has contracted for both the Arctic and the Antarctic. And we have a whole set of activities, phone calls and such that we work with you, the research team, the teacher, the research team, and the logistics people. yeah, that, and where Sarah's pointing to, that's the pre and post expedition travel support. But we do a lot with logistics to make sure you're all squared away. Another key activity that a lot of programs don't have the ability to support is that we can cover substitute costs. We reimburse your school for time away from school if the expedition happens during that time, and then we have some funding to cover some miscellaneous expenses like visa fees or medical expenses or things like that. Again, we have alumni that are involved. Our alumni are very close. They are very active, not only with PolarTREC, but they're becoming active on a very international level with other polar-related activities, and they're involved at a variety of levels throughout this whole program. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we also have the ability and data for or not data, we have money, if we get funded, we've requested funding for teachers and participants in our program to have access to funding to go to conferences or to meet with their field team or something like that. So we have ongoing support for you. So those are some of our key components that makes us a little bit different than others. I guess the other one that's not on there is that we have a comprehensive evaluation program as well. We collect student data, research with data, as well as teacher data. So the timeline, how does this all flow? This is on the internet. You can, it's kind of small here, but you can look at it much closer. And of course, if you're selected, you get to know this timeline in more depth. But basically, we start selecting the year before, so we're in 2013, that whole process. I think actually I have a timeline for that coming up, so I won't cover the whole application timeline, but basically by December, we'd have everything finalized, and then in January or so we'd start some of our activities, and one of them is a webinar to get to know everybody, and then the orientation in February. We have another webinar for teams going into the Arctic, and then we start, typically the Arctic field season starts sometime in late March or April, so obviously runs throughout the summer. During that time, we'd have a webinar for the Antarctic teams, and then sometime in after school gets going, we'll do a webinar with the Arctic teams to see how that all went. And then, of course, the Antarctic field season is starting as well. And then, anyway, we kind of have this flow of Arctic, Antarctic, Arctic, Antarctic that goes along, and underneath it all is always evaluation and always other activities that are happening, like maybe somebody's doing webinars, people are posting lessons, all sorts of posting journals and all that kind of stuff to the website. So lots of activity. It's always ongoing all year long. So with that, let me cover a little bit of details about each of our components of our program. So the teacher research experience, which most of you have probably read, obviously happens in the polar regions. That's why it's called PolarTREC. If you were thinking you were going to the equator, this is not the show for you. Sorry about that. But the experiences last from 3 to 6 weeks. Really, we need to have that time so you can get to know everybody and really get your hands involved, get that hands-on experience. As the next bullet says, this is an intense field work experience, You spend lots of time. You spend all your waking and hours with your research team, your sleeping hours maybe in the same tent. You really get to know everybody, and you become part of the team. We do make sure that you are properly prepared in a number of ways, both from the safety standpoint as well as how you're going to take this experience into your classroom, and really work with you to make sure that you maximize your professional development and really get something out of it. And then the teachers are expected to be outreach people and communicate with the public, and we provide the tools for that as well. So, you know, as a teacher in this experience, you wear many, many hats. And of course, when you go back to your classroom, you put your teacher hat back on and you hopefully use this experience in your teaching career. Just to give you an idea of where we place folks, the stars are some locations. Sometimes there's more than one person at, there's been more than one expedition to these same spots, but you can see they're circumpolar. And oh, sorry, I did see that text. Little chat, very cute. We do have hats for sale if you need to wear one. Anyway, they're all over the place. It just depends on the researchers that have applied to the program. As far as the professional development piece of PolarTREC, you know, this is your chance to get that science content and engineering and technology. STEM is STEM is part of any science career, so we are STEM rich, I guess you want to. You will hit every NGSS standard there ever was probably in an experience like this, and you can take it back to your classroom. You work together, and again, the whole idea is for you to utilize this experience, develop lessons. Developing lessons is one of our program requirements, and so you take those back to your classroom. It's an experience for you as a teacher. And as far as the piece about classroom and public outreach, we provide a lot of tools, not everything, but a lot of tools, and we'll support you in whatever way we can. But things that we do have, and this becomes important as you're working on applications, is that we do have the ability to use things like Blackboard Collaborate or Skype to do Polar Connect presentations. So these are connections, real-time events from the field to classrooms or to a public audience, whether it be a library, a Rotary Club, or your other teachers and stuff. So we do those Polar Connect presentations. It's a requirement for all of our teachers to try to conduct at least one presentation. So if you don't know what those are or haven't a good sense of what those are, I encourage you to go to our website and look under the Polar Connect archives to get a feel of what those look like and what we're talking about. We also obviously have a comprehensive website, so we expect teachers and actually even research team members, if they have the time and want to contribute to their expedition page and post journals and videos and just and photos and let us know what is going on. We have another way for the public to interact with research teams, and that's through Ask the Team forums. And this is really the responsibility of the teacher that's part of the team to kind of look at those questions, ask those respond to questions, and relay important questions to the research team if needed. So that's a teacher responsibility to respond to those Ask the Team forums. But we have all that set up and ready to go. Basically, the participants become the managers and the content providers of those places. And we show you how to do all that. That's part of our training in Fairbanks. Basically, all of that, obviously, classroom public outreach is important for connecting to the outside world about what's happening in polar science. It's a great way for classrooms to follow along. As far as what kinds of what we can do for supporting you and networking with you after, any time during this professional development. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some funding, or we hope to have some funding, to help keep those relationships going between the teams. And that funding usually is in the form of like travel requests. That's what most people request, where they want to get together. Maybe you've already been out on an expedition, and as a teacher you want to see how the data is processed, maybe back at the lab. So we'll fund a travel request for you to go visit research team and go look at the data for a couple days. Or maybe a researcher wants to go to the school at some point and go learn more about the teachers, and that would be another place that we would fund, or a conference perhaps. So that's our goal, is to put that in there. We also use that alumni that we have, and during orientation we match you up, not necessarily in person, but we give you access to the give you contact info to a teacher partner, and these are hopefully people that will join your pre-field call and be available by email to respond to questions about where you're going to go, or how to, how to integrate this into your classroom. Usually it's by location and maybe sometimes by discipline. In addition to that, the alumni, both teachers and researchers, make up this PolarTREC network. And this right now is mostly virtual networking. We use social network tools to kind of connect all of that alumni, and they just build collaborations and bounce ideas off of each other and kind of go do their own thing after a little while. Sarah and I just kind of sit there and go, yeah, that's great. But anyway, it's always growing and it's always engaging, and there's lots going on within that group of people. We also have everybody that goes out, all the teaching participants, one of the requirements is to create lesson plans. So I mentioned that earlier, but in addition, many of you will create videos, or there'll be newspaper articles or websites or things that are really interesting about the research that the teams are working on, and that all becomes part of our online learning resources database. And if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to go look, because that's a good place to look for Polar lessons and activities. They're all vetted by teachers and researchers, so it's a good resource database. Other things include our listserv, which many of you probably have already subscribed to, and mostly that's a one-way street of us sharing opportunities and things that are coming up. And then we also will, this isn't just exclusive for us, but obviously being part of this group, you'll learn about the international connections and other groups that are focused or have similar interests and commonality about the polar regions, and we connect you with them, and it just provides another avenue for growth, both professionally and personally. Okay, enough of that. So if you don't like it now, you'll like it even more after I tell you the impacts and benefits. No, just kidding. I just wanted to give you an idea of what we have been doing so you can get a good picture. And I promise the application piece here in a moment. Or Sarah, do you want to talk about this piece? I forgot that you were going to talk about this.
Wherever you want me to jump in. You're on a roll, whatever you'd like.
Roll, I'll go. Okay, so I forgot to take a breath here. So this is just a quick little table of the number of participants we've supported for the years. And it does include Einstein Fellows in our numbers. Every year there's an Einstein Fellow that from the opposite, from Polar programs, they're called Polar programs now, that joins us. But basically it just shows you that the number of teachers and throughout the years and where they've been. So we've had 78 in the Arctic and 40 in the Antarctic for a total of 18. Yes? Somebody have a question? Okay, just getting background noise. All right. So what that looks like as far as participants by grade level, you might be interested in this piece. Basically, it shakes out that high school and middle school are kind of our predominant grades, or where our participants come from. But for those of you that aren't in high school or middle school, which kind of makes sense that they would be dominant, there are elementary teachers. We definitely encourage elementary teachers to apply to this program. It's a great opportunity. We've had informal educators from museums or science centers apply. Community college is also listed. Yes, if you're in the community college arena, we do accept applications from you. And then, like I said, we've had the Einstein Fellows as well. So we'll go into more about applicants and address some of those questions down the road here. And then just a quick little snippet of some of our products. We've had over 100 Polar-related lessons developed. That's on that online learning database. Through those Polar Connect or live events I was talking about earlier, which all of our teachers try to do, we've connected with over 50,000 participants. And this is in the last 4 years of the grant, by the way. Out of those participants, 82 have done this, joined for the very first time. So what an incredible outreach opportunity for people to talk to scientists. It's really unique. Along with that, we've had a lot of visitors to our website, a lot of millions of unique page visits. If you're a web person, that might make more sense to you. And then we also partner with other people besides NSF. We do work with NASA, NOAA, the USGS, BLM, National Park Service, as well as a few others that we've just started working with this last year. So it's just not exclusive to NSF, although they predominantly are our main funder. But we do get researchers in particular from those other organizations that apply to our program. And our bottom line is that what we say is PolarTREC is transformative, primarily for the teacher, but also for the researcher, and as this is professional development, and we really want to change how teachers do science in their classroom. So the next piece, I'm going to change to Sarah. You can do these last 3 slides.
Sure, sounds good. So Janet's been leading up to what some of these benefits have been. So looking first at the teachers, of course you guys are going to be able to benefit as teachers getting out into the field with that hands-on experience. You get to be the integral part of the science team and really doing the science. So making sure that you are actively engaged in what's going on. In our evaluation data, teachers are reporting that there's a real significant increase in knowledge and understanding of topics related to the polar regions, so a knowledge gain, as well as a preparedness and understanding of teaching scientific methods and inquiry skills. So there's probably a way that you are used to teaching and it's pretty effective at this point, and this would just be adding to that. Another big piece is that we often get teachers who are really interested in taking that step themselves and becoming a better educator, and they're feeling that they really do get that professional rejuvenation and being treated like a professional, and teachers deserve every kindness and respect for what they've been doing in the classrooms, and this is an amazing experience to take it one step further. As I said, you're getting a little of that science content and technology skills that are in science. And we're looking now at what researchers get. So researchers are able to get someone working out in the field with them, so a real team member, just as we keep saying teachers are out there as important parts of the research team. Those folks are able to have someone who's on hand and working really hard with the rest of the team, doing everything lockstep with everybody in the field. It's a great way to do very impactful outreach. So there's lots of different ways that researchers are able to make broader impacts with their science, and PolarTREC is an incredibly effective way, and it's like contracting out for the outreach being done by a professional person who knows how to do that kind of an education. There's the personal satisfaction of a teacher and of working with a teacher and contributing to the education system and understanding it a little bit better. A lot of our researchers, when they get back, they feel like they understand a little bit more about what it takes to be an educator in the system we have here. There's the lasting communication and community that the educators and the researchers have. We have folks who've been working together for many years and expanding upon that field experience. And as Janet had mentioned, we offer travel and support to get you to research labs, as well as researchers going to classrooms and seeing where it is that the work is being outreached to. and improvements in your ability to teach and communicate science. So again, working with a professional communicator, if you will, these teachers have the ability to really boil down the science to the raw essence and being able to share it widely. And we've actually had teachers who have helped researchers kind of reframe the science that's happening out in the field. So it's a pretty deep relationship that's being built. The next piece here is looking at how students are able to benefit. So we're looking at, let me get to the next slide here. Students are benefiting from watching their teacher be able to actually do science. So having a true role model that's been out in the field, I think that's a great point for the teachers, in that they're able to really understand the scientific process from A to Z, not only just what we see in our textbooks, but the entire process. And the same for students. They're able to understand through journals as the teacher is out in the field, as well as when they get back, teachers are able to share it in different ways in their classrooms, as well as in communities. The science communicated through the journals and through live events and then back in communities is really fun and exciting. It's not just the science that's happening, but it's the camaraderie of people in the field working together and sharing ideas. So there's a lot to be learned about how the science is done and what makes science successful. That kind of leads into making these connections between real science, teamwork, and problem solving. I think one of the most beneficial pieces that teachers come away with and share with students is that creativity and ingenuity is a true part of science that makes it very successful. And students are able to hold on to those concepts as well as the real science. They're also able to participate in more inquiry-based science in the classroom. A lot of our teachers do bring back the real data sets back into the classroom, and students are able to work with those scientists, have a real dialogue with the researchers, and increase knowledge in the science subjects that are being taught about the polar regions, as well as our evaluations are showing that students are have a statistically increased interest in science, and attitude towards science is more positive when their teachers are participating in programs like this. So that's a little bit about how we're all benefiting from that. Janet had also talked about who it is that is participating. You might have noted that many more of the expeditions are in the Arctic. A lot of people ask about where these expeditions are taking place. And yes, there's a lot of high school and middle school teachers that are participating, but we really, again, encourage teachers of all different levels, because I think all students are able to benefit from these programs. So I'm going to turn it back over to Janet, I think, as she's had a drink of water and a little break here. How you doing, Janet?
Hi, I'm having technical issues, but I'm back. Can you hear me, Sarah?
I can hear you. You are connected by the phone, is that right?
Yeah, I'm just by the phone right at the moment. So,
okay. So I'm turning to the application process page.
All right, I was trying to reboot my computer in the whole process here, or get back on the Blackboard. So, yeah, the application phase is that I think and I'll just have to assume you're on the application timeline, right, Sarah?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so the application timeline is such that if you look at August, you can see that we're accepting applications until September 16th, 5 p.m. Alaska Standard Time or Daylight Time. We have a selection committee that we convene, and the committee is made up of teachers that have been through the program and researchers, as well as a few logistics providers and us. And they're the ones that are actually going to go through all of the teacher applications.
Oh, no. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Look, Janet, do we still have you?
Hear me?
I thought it was maybe my phone. Sorry.
No,
that's okay. Janet, do we still have you on the phone?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. Anyway, so the committee will review applications, but like as I said earlier, The researchers will make the final call. So what happens is the selection committee looks at applications. They give us their top teachers. Sarah and I look at researcher applications, and we figure out best possible matches with the top teachers and match them up with the researcher applications. We send a set of applications to the researchers. They tell us who they want to interview, and then they do interviews and make their final selections. So this whole piece that we'll go into just a little bit more in depth here in a moment happens between now and December. So Sarah and I are quite busy. So if you don't hear from us for a little while, it's because we're going through that process, and we try to keep everyone updated by emails and such, but sometimes things happen and it slips. Our goal is to have everybody selected, both the research applications projects as well as the teachers that are going out by January 2014. That sets us up so that we can have that teacher orientation in late February and some of those webinars, that webinar where we get everybody to be introduced to one another. And then obviously the rest of the piece is about going out into the field and all that kind of stuff. So right now I think the important piece for everyone on the phone to know for this webinar is to know that we're going to do this whole selection piece and matching as far as we possibly can. However, everything after that point is pending if we receive additional funding. So it may be a time that we get everybody all matched up and we say, yep, we like you, you're ready to go, you got a team, and if we still don't know our funding status, it might be that we have to hold off on actually bringing people up to an orientation and deploying them to a field until we know of our funding status. So just be aware that there could be this event happening sometime later this winter where we say, well, we actually don't have a program. I don't foresee that, but one never knows. So that's just a quick little snippet about the application timeline. As far as the matching process and what happens, I kind of talked a little bit about this, but the matching process is that we get at least over 150 up to 200 applications. We review them internally, and then we send the top 100 or so to this selection committee, which I talked about. They create a final pool of about 40, and then this is where Sarah and I dive into the pile and we really start matching people. So when you say you want to go to the Arctic or you want to go to the Antarctic or you want to do both, we start matching you up with the appropriate research team. And then the researchers look at those applications. Sometime in late October, we'll notify everybody about where you are. Like I said, we'll let you know whether you made it to that final top 40 or so and where you are in the selection process. And then in November, researchers will review, sometimes it's a little bit earlier, we'll get the applications to the research team, and they get to review who they want to interview, and they send us their top 3 candidates for a phone interview. And we do phone interviews, and we schedule that with you, with the teachers, and we conduct them. We have sets of questions and all that kind of stuff, but it's a great time for the researchers to find out more about you or the teacher about the research team. And then in the end, the research team selects their top candidate. And then, like I said earlier, we'll have a webinar. So the application form, is that where we are, Sarah?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the application form is online, and there is one for both the researcher that wants to host a teacher as well as one for the teacher to apply to the program. They're both online. Both applications have a Word document attached or available online. We encourage everyone to fill it out on the Word document first, and then cut and paste your answers into the online application form. Nothing is saved on the online application form if you navigate away from it. Important. So do it in Word first and then come back and cut and paste into the application. Everything, actually in both applications there's short answer and long answer. Obviously the researcher one is more applicable. We're asking questions about where are you going, when are you going, some logistics, who's funding you, more of what you would put into your proposal. And then we do ask some questions about why you want a teacher, who would mentor it. On the teacher application, we get more into how you'd use this experience, what are your ideas for sharing it to the public, and that kind of thing. We do ask demographic information, so there's a lot going on in the application. For all of these applications, whether it be researcher or teacher, you do need an email address, and it's the only way for it to cross-check that you are the same person and not spam and things. So make sure you have a good email address. And I guess that's the other piece of that. It's not just a good email address like your school one that you check often and that hopefully doesn't, if we're being spammed, you won't hear from us. So make sure that that info@PolarTREC.com and Sarah and my emails don't get spammed, so you know what's going on. Let's see, and then if you have any trouble, you can always send us an email and we'll address your problems as soon as possible. All applications from both the teachers and assistants are due on Monday, September 16th, 2013 at 5 p.m. There are some application things if you are an alumni that's a PolarTREC alumni. There's some additional paperwork that you need to do, not necessarily at that time frame, but we'll send you an email. And if you are a teacher or a researcher that are co-applying with one another, there's some additional paperwork that needs to be done as well. And I forgot what we call that, a pre-existing relationship, I believe. Application tips. So cannot emphasize this enough. Please spell check and proofread. Have somebody else read your application, especially the essay answers. It's disheartening, I want to say, to have work turned in by teachers that isn't really well done, because you kind of wonder what else is going on in the classroom. You expect good stuff from your students. We expect good stuff from you. Be thorough but concise. You have the essay questions only allow for, is it characters or words, but it's 200 words, is that right, Sarah?
200 words, yep.
So essay questions, only allow for 200 words. So, be thorough but concise, and note that there are word limits. Be clear about what you want out of our program, both personally, professional. Be realistic. That big family event's happening next year during the summer, and you only want to go to the Arctic, which is usually in the summer, and you don't think that you can do those two things at once. Well, that's okay. Maybe this isn't your year. Or if you're going to, you got something else, you got a master's degree you're working on or something, can you really do both of these in 1 year? Because we do ask a lot out of you, and it does take a while to fulfill all of our requirements. It can, I would say, realistically about a year to get everything done. So think about that, and think about how you'd use this experience. Be clear about your ideas, and you'd share this experience beyond not just your classroom, but within your community, your school, etc. Give us some good examples when possible. Make sure you read all the questions and address them. And I think this is probably one of our bigger pet peeves is the website. We have a lot of information on the website, and yes, it can be daunting sometimes to go through it, but it's all there, and you can look at examples. You can see what other teachers have done. You can email them. It's all there. So use the website to your advantage and see what people have already done. And then again, make sure that your email, our emails are coming to your inbox. All right, where are you at now, Sarah?
We are on the please don't slide.
But I let you do that for a moment while I reestablish a connection here.
Sure, no problem. So just as Janet went through and talked about some tips for our applications, we want to make sure you guys have a little heads up on things that you probably shouldn't do. It really just reiterates what Janet was saying. So please check on how you're spelling PolarTREC. It's in the top left corner of our slides, and it stands for Teachers and Researchers Exploring and Collaborating. It would be great if you spell Arctic and Antarctic right. Those are tough ones because we don't always pronounce them as they're spelled. Beyond that, it's really important that your essays, your essay questions are not written as, what I want and this will do X, Y, and Z for me. So don't just write I, and me. Please make sure that you're bringing in a little bit of your community and your students and others who will benefit from the program as well. Let's see, a couple other things in terms of your larger essay questions. You can paraphrase. Again, it's just about being concise and being short with that 200-word response. But don't be too vague. I know it's difficult, but if you can try and be concise, it's the best way to use that phrase. You can maybe use an example to talk about a particular idea that you have, but just keep it to a sentence or two. We'll get the idea. Please don't submit incomplete answers. It's often that we'll see applications that came in too soon and folks just didn't complete it. If you do hit the submit button by mistake and you haven't completed your application, that's okay. Just make sure you can either send us an email that says, disregard that last one that I sent, my name is blah, blah, blah. Or you can just resubmit that application, and when we come to our deadline, we'll take the latest application that you have sent in. So we'll know it's kind of the last one you sent in case you do have incomplete answers. And please don't email us with any additional documentation or lesson plans. Everything we need will be available in that in the application that you're filling out. So again, we wrote a little bit down here about the corrections and changes. So there's two ways to be able to do that. So we're going to move on to if you are selected. You'll probably be pretty excited about what's going to be happening. And let me check in with Janet and see if she's ready to take back over or want me to keep going.
I'm good. I can jump in now.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So, and I think I got reconnected. Of course, I don't see any slides. But if you
we're on selected teachers are provided, and there's a list of things.
Okay. So if you're selected, and it is a very exciting moment, I must say that I like to call it my Ed McMahon phase for those of you who remember that guy. And when we get to call you and say, hey, guess what happened? But you get, we provide all that training we talked about, and we do provide the travel and the funds and arrange for everything to get you to that one-week orientation in Fairbanks. Again, we will have limited travel support that will become available to you for meetings between the teacher and research team, or however you guys decide to use that money. In addition, we'll have the equipment, most of the equipment that you'll need to participate with the public as well as with your cohort, and that includes a laptop. We'll provide a laptop if you want it, camera and related accessories and adapters and things like that. So we'll go over our technology equipment. You'll get most of the outdoor clothing and gear that you need to travel to the Arctic or the Antarctic, wherever you're going to go, including outerwear, shoes, camping gear if that's needed, etc. Those are things that we go over in the pre-filled logistics call, what kind of gear. Like I said a lot earlier, we cover your substitute costs if you're a teacher during that week of orientation, as well as if your expedition is going on during the school year. And then we cover, we just try to cover a lot of the miscellaneous costs. So a lot of things are covered for you and provided for you if you're selected. If you're a researcher that's selected, we'll work with your NSF and or whoever we'll work with NSF logistics providers to make sure that the teacher is covered to go on your expedition, and this is regardless if whether your research project is NSF funded or not. So that's an important thing for researchers. So we'll work with the NSF logistics providers will cover all the teacher stuff, even if you're being funded by some other entity and you're going to host a team. And we can go over the details with researchers at different times. We'll provide all the support and other things that the NSF logistics providers or schools don't cover. Like sometimes teachers are traveling to and from a field site and and that isn't covered by the logistics provider, we'll pick up that field cost or that per diem for that extra day in town or something like that. So we go over that with all the research teams. Again, for the researchers, you should know that teachers will get equipment so that they can do their outreach activities while in the field, and we'll make sure that they have all the gear, and we work with you on comms and whatever else is needed to get support the teacher in the field. So there are some costs that that researchers, unfortunately, we can't cover for researchers, and this include, like if a researcher wants to come to the orientation, which we do encourage, we can't cover that necessarily. We might be able to pick up a few things like maybe lodging or something, but we can't overall cover all of that travel. There are some pre-field communication costs that we can't cover, or materials or books that you may send to your teacher. We might be able to cover pre- or post-field travel, like if you're going to go to their classroom to meet your teacher or something like that. So we might be able to do some of that. But most of the travel funds support the teacher. We can go over this details with a researcher if the researcher selects. As far as costs that a teacher may incur, this is things usually associated with gear, like we don't cover sunglasses or maybe your underwear or toiletry, all that other kind of stuff. We do cover, you may end up having extra medical or evacuation insurance costs that don't get covered by your particular insurance, but actually ARCUS will reimburse you. So you may have an initial expense and then we'll reimburse you. We don't cover any personal travel associated with any of these activities. So if you decide you're in Alaska on an expedition and you want to go see Denali National Park after the expedition, then that's on your own. And this has come up more recently, salary. We don't cover your salary at a school. We reimburse for substitute only, and you will not receive a stipend for participating in the program. If you get selected and you end up having to take time off from your school, there's not much I can do about that, but we can try to convince your school that this is professional development and that personal days, that's not what the idea is, not to use up all your personal or sick days or have you take a sabbatical or anything. The idea is that you're in school and that you're being paid as on your regular contract, and we're just reimbursing for a substitute in your classroom. But we can talk more about that if you get to that point and you're selected. Sometimes that does happen, and we work really hard to make sure it doesn't happen very often or that there's workarounds. Let's see. Are we on teacher expected time commitment, Sarah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. So what to expect out of this and how much time to commit. Like you've got the 1 week orientation, like you're going to fill out your applications. Obviously that's time invested in it. We have webinars. There's at least 3 or 4 of them. They last about an hour or 2 depending on the type. You got your time in the field. You got your personal time to practice and do all this. I mean, I would say with everything that goes on for a teacher, you know, it's not that it's going to be 1 year in continuous work with us, but you should expect to spend a year of being in contact with Sarah and myself and your research team. And it amounts to a lot of different activities, both before you go in the field, during the So there's all the program requirements kind of extend for about a year out, and from the time you go out into the field, and so or are selected. So there is some a time commitment as far as the teacher. As far as is the next one, the researcher. As far as
yes, researcher expected time commitment.
Sorry, trying to catch up with my world here. So as far as researchers, it's not as intensive as a teacher as far as like being on the phone with us or preparing. You do, as a researcher, you do have to read applications and select your teacher. That takes some time. There's some webinars to participate in, some logistical things with your teacher, as well as obviously working with the teacher in the field. I think the biggest thing for researchers is that being available and being responsive to the teacher even after the field season. That's where we really want a researcher to still, you know, they've gone out in the field with you, they've done this now, and now they're the participant is trying to synthesize this information. So for researchers, we want you to be available and committed to working with that teacher again for, you know, probably up to that year-long time frame, but it's not going to be every day, every hour, everything. It's going to be after the field season. It will be on an as-needed basis. We'll want you to review their lesson plans, you know, share outreach activities, that kind of thing. So it's not as big of a commitment from a researcher. Actually, I got to say from my perspective, researchers, you get a lot of bang for your buck here. Teachers are the ones that do everything and are the big, you have a lot of commitments, and on your end you just need to check in and you get a lot of benefit from having them on your team. So anyway, it's not a lot except for at the initial and obviously during in the field, and for the researchers it's really as much as you put into it is what you'll get out of it too. So okay, next up, where are we? Okay.
Oh, it's that part where, what if I didn't get picked? Now what?
Yeah, so it does happen. I'm sorry to say that I don't have money for everybody. I wish I did. I'd send you all out. But what can you do? You didn't get picked. Well, we hope that we're funded so that you get to apply again in the future. Right now, this is a big if. We should put a lot of asterisks around this one. But that's not the end. You know, right now, even if we don't get funded for 2014 and 15, that means that there's still stuff happening. We have teachers that just got back from the Arctic. There's teachers going to the Antarctic this year. They'll go all the way through February. So there's lots happening. You can read about them and share the journals in your classroom. You can have students ask questions. You know, you can use the photos. You can use their videos. There's lots of information there, both from past and current teachers. And we hope that now that you know there's a resource out there, if you didn't know about it before, that you'll take advantage of it and use it in your classroom whatever way possible. Along with that, we'll have, especially with Antarctica coming up here, it's a great time for classrooms to participate in Antarctica Polar Connect events. There's a Polar Week coming up in September, a Polar Day on December 1st, and all of those will involve some kind of webinar or live event or interactive activity. That's a great way to get your classrooms connected with what's happening in the polar regions. The polar regions are important. We don't have time for that webinar right now, but if you don't know what's happening in the polar regions and how it relates to what's going on in the rest of the world, Whether you're a teacher or not, you need to know because it's critical to all of us. And that's my little speech, my soapbox for the moment. And there are resources. Check out the resources that are online and use them. And if you need them modified or have ideas or suggestions or your own resources to contribute, we greatly, we would accept them. We like that. Then just send us an email and let us know what we can do with those resources so they're usable for you. We already mentioned the e-list. The other thing I think you need to know is that there are these two amazing groups out there. In particular, APEX is the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists. I think APEX is .org or APEX is, I don't know. Sarah might be able to type in what their website is. It's certainly on our website. But APEX is this group of polar researchers, young scientists around the world, global, bilingual, multilingual, all over, that are very passionate about their work, and they are very eager to connect with educators around the world. Take advantage of APEX. They have a lot of things going on. Obviously, they're very knowledgeable about science, but they really want to connect with teachers. So it's a great resource. You should connect and learn more about APEX. Along that same vein, Polar Educators International, a newly formed group, of which Sarah and I are major players in, is a group of educators such as yourself that are very interested in polar science. So I encourage you to connect with, at minimum, APEX and PEI. There's other ones as well. And just learn more about what's happening on an international effort with the polar regions and trying to educate people about the poles. All right, let's see. So anyway, I guess the thing is, don't let, just because you didn't get a professional development opportunity, like I said, I wish I could give it to everybody. I can't, but be sure to use the resources. A lot of people have spent time and money on them, and we're very proud of them, and we want people to use them. So be free to do so. Okay, with that, I think we're to frequently asked questions. Is that right,
Yep.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to see if I can get back into Blackboard world here.
All right, no problem. Yeah, I did put up the apex.is website for folks, and you can find Polar Educators International on Facebook. And Carrie was just saying it's a great Facebook group too, good sharing of ideas and events, so thanks for that. So now we're going to turn to the questions that were submitted by you folks in terms of things you're interested to know about. And some of these questions have been answered as we've gone through our presentation, so I've also grouped them together a little bit. So we'll start here with your questions about the expedition time frames. So when would the programs be? And I saw them, they could be 3 weeks was the shortest. How do you decide if you're staying 3 to 6 weeks, and what makes it shorter or longer? So basically what happens is the research teams are out in the field for a particular time frame, and maybe you're a researcher that's in the Arctic for the whole summer. You may be interested in having a teacher for a particular, maybe 4 weeks or so, for a particular component of your research. And so you can, as a researcher, you can say, I'd like a teacher in this time period. Or researchers may say, I'm available and open at any time, and we can help work with teachers' schedules that way. Teachers are able to indicate on their applications when they're available, what works for you, and any dates, like blackout dates where you're not available. So those are very helpful to us as we're starting to pair people together. When you do have the chance to select whether you'd like to go to the Arctic, Antarctic, or both, we do take that into consideration and ask you to give us like an explanation of why you're interested in that. So please make sure you're being clear on what you'd like. Can participants be full-time teachers and participate during the summer break? Yes, and this is very common that teachers might not be able to leave the school during the school year to go to the Antarctic, that's their field season is during our school year. So there are many expeditions during summer break as well. So just indicate that if that's your case. If a teacher doesn't want to miss any school, that's exactly what we were just talking about. What are the chances of finding a researcher in the field during the months of summer? Pretty good, so we suggest that you apply. So eligibility. There's a couple questions here. Since I'm not currently in a K-12 classroom, am I eligible to apply? So yes, we do take teachers that are K through 12 in classrooms, as well as community college educators and sort of 12 plus, people call that sometimes. So definitely we would like it that you are clear on exactly how you're able to implement this into whatever program you're working in. This can include informal educators that are at museums or science centers. As you saw, that piece of the pie is smaller, and I would suggest that you're just very clear on how you're able to really connect with visitors to your center, or how you're able to connect with multiple visitors over a long period of time. And I think that is just a mode of working that is less familiar outside of education. So just be clear about how that works and how it is very, very useful. Can one participate in this program if they reside outside of America? That's a great question. So this program is for U.S. teachers that are in the States or based outside of the States. So that's our main focus, is those folks. We have had applicants from Canada who have gotten pretty far into the process, and so we suggest you apply, and if it gets to that point where you're right at the top of the selection, we'll talk to you more about what is truly possible. But that's basically what we've come to thus far is folks in the United States and Canada. So that's a couple of questions there. I do see some questions that are going on in the chat box. Maybe Janet is able to answer those while we're talking.
Yeah, so somebody was asking about the advantages or disadvantages of applying with pre-existing relationships. Basically, for people that have been already working with a researcher for a while, it's a polar scientist, and maybe they've been to your classroom, or maybe you did some side work for them already. It's our way to kind of help those people that have already been together doing something, just kind of continue that work. And so it's not designed for you as a teacher that hasn't ever worked with a researcher to go suddenly find one, convince them that you need to work with them just so you can get into the program. They're evaluated on the same basis as everybody else, so they're, I guess that's just one thing to bear in mind. And as far as the advantage, the only advantage you have is that you were already working together. So maybe you've already done some work together, and it just kind of maybe solidifies your relationship a little bit more. That's really the advantage. Hopefully I answered that for you, Lucy.
I see one question that's similar to what's coming up here in applications from Carrie.
Yeah, so you don't have to have a certain level of content knowledge before traveling. What happens is the researchers do have the option in their application of asking if they can kind of tell us what they're looking for. They might be looking for a high school teacher that with a strong chemistry background or something for their particular work, and so we'll send them a list of applicants that meet that criteria. But sometimes we'll even send them maybe one or two that don't meet that criteria. Maybe there's a middle school teacher that has some kind of chemistry background, or just seems like a really good fit because they just said that. We'll send that to the research team, and we'll work with them to figure out who the best person is. But you don't need to come in with, just be truthful on your application as to what your background is and everything, and we'll find you, if you're selected, we'll find you the best match. If you get to that top 40 pool, we'll match you up with a research team or two or three or four, just depending on your background, that best fits you. Hopefully that answers Carrie's. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like. Yeah, Janet, I'm going to turn over to costs here, and one that was asked in the chat box that I'd love your opinion on is for informal educators. Are we able to cover substitute costs for informal educators, whether it be, let's say, in a museum setting or something like that?
I think we'd have to work with you on how that goes, but I guess if you, we'd have to talk to you individually. If you're selected, we'd address that individually. It kind of just depends on if you're really getting a substitute or somebody to fill in your position while you're gone. We've had some situations like that. And, we just worked with the directors of those.
Case by case.
Yeah, it's a case by case.
Thanks. That's what I figured. Just wanted to make sure with you. All right. So we did cover the travel costs, substitute teachers, etc. would be covered during the longer expeditions. That is true as far as we've mentioned. And we certainly do cover those things for the week-long training when you're in Alaska, but when you're on expedition as well. What if you are not able to make the training in February? That is a great question. There is a space in our application process for you to mention that and tell us why that would be. It would need to be a pretty compelling reason because it's a week long for a reason. It's a really intensive training that has been touted as some of the best professional development available for teachers that they've ever been to. So it is important that you're very clear with us why it is you're unable to make that training. It doesn't make or break things completely, but we do need to know what the situation is. What are the fees? We talked a little bit about the costs that are incurred by teachers. Is there any sort of stipend involved? We talked about that already, and the answer is no. And then let's see, applications. Do you intend to favor participants with or without a previous similar experience? So there are programs like ours, such as Know a Teacher at Sea, and it's important that you're able to convey to us what makes our program unique for you. We do ask you if you've filled out all your applications, your requirements for other programs, and we often do check in with program managers of those other programs just to check and see how things are, and usually you would put those as your recommendations anyways. So it's not a prerequisite for our program. It's common for teachers to seek more of these opportunities, though it's not something that will hinder you either. So it's good to let us know how you've been using that experience and how you'll build on it. This is from somebody who, the next one is from someone who has made it through to kind of that top tier of participants that were made it through the first couple months of our selection process, and what would you do to increase the chances of making that final selection? I think sometimes it comes down to which research projects are available that year and what your interests are. We just maybe don't have a program that fits yours for that year, your interests. And that doesn't mean we wouldn't send your application off to a research team. It just might be a little more difficult to place you with a team and by particularly your interests. It's really important that you make sure that what you are conveying in your application in terms of how you are maybe a teacher leader or innovative things you've done in the classroom are applicable to the research team. And remember that the researchers are reading these applications later in the stages of the selection process. And you need to be able to convey and sort of translate what we do as educators to an audience of non-educators. And some researchers do teach classes, but it might be at a different level or a different sort. So being able to communicate what you do with a non-educator-based audience is a pretty important skill. That kind of covers that piece on applications, how they are sort of set above others, just being very clear, being able to communicate with that broader audience. That's very, very helpful. One thing I don't think we mentioned is try not to use abbreviations. Please explain what it is that you are talking about. Instead of saying NGSS, you can certainly say Next Generation Science Standards. That might be a very important point, but don't lose that translation for folks that are outside the education community.
Good point.
How do you recommend approaching the application as an informal educator? again, it's the same as I'm saying. Just be very clear about how you're going to be able to utilize a program that was sort of set up for classroom teachers, how you can use that in your situation. Again, you might have to explain what it's like to design an exhibit at a science center. But if you can do that and have it translate well to another audience, that's going to be one of your biggest points. For researchers, what does a PolarTREC application look like that is competitive? Basically, we really want to know what it is that you are drawn to in terms of bringing an educator out into the field. You know, these teachers are looking for a really engaging experience, as long as they are doing the research, but we don't want them to be sort of just a workhorse. We want to know that you're going to be communicating the science with them and having a dialogue back and forth, and you're ready to engage in a long-lasting relationship with that educator over time, building lesson plans or curriculum, because as we've seen, those relationships can really blossom and even affect how the science is done in the field. So that long-term commitment and interest in really working directly with the teacher, as long as you're conveying those pieces, that's a really good start. And here's just some sundry questions that we probably have covered already. This was an interesting one about how students are directly or indirectly participants in the program. We do not send students out into the field at this point. There are other programs for that. Something called Students on Ice would be a good example, kind of a model. But we have our students involved in the evaluations, so you'd give your students some surveys. They're participating by reading journals and asking questions, but they are not going out into the field, so I wanted to clarify that. What ships will you use and what bases? There are some icebreakers that are used. The U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy is a really popular one, so you could look that one up and find out more about that ship. And there are U.S. bases in Antarctica. McMurdo is the most common one that people go to, as well as Palmer Station is a little smaller. And there are some remote sites that people go to. Even in the Arctic as well, there may be opportunities to do camping-based remote operations out in the field. Also in the Arctic, there are research stations throughout Alaska, as well as sending teachers to other countries in the Arctic too. If I start a project, am I able to continue to get data and information to share with my students and other courses around the nation? And that is hitting the nail on the head. That's our ultimate goal, is that you're able to continue collaborating with researchers, getting that data, real-time data out to students and to communities to understand the science in the polar regions. So hopefully, yes, is the answer to that question. What are the physical fitness requirements? That's also a really good question. Again, you've probably gotten the idea that this can be a pretty rugged situation. There is a point in the applications for teachers where we are asking just kind of your everyday, what you do, what your outdoor experiences have been. And for researchers, we are asking you to indicate in your application how it is you're getting to the field, what is a day-to-day experience like in the field, so we can get a better idea of what that looks like. We will go over some of that when you get all the way to the phone interview portion of the selection process as well. I was assuming that we are paired with researchers based on our experience. Is that true? Again, a little bit, and we'll try and pair you with a researcher that has a project that's based on your science interests, but that may not always be the case. There may be another factor that brings you guys together. I'm a chemistry teacher and very interested in PolarTREC. Will any of the research have a chemistry application? We're just not sure yet. All the researchers are applying just as the teachers are. How much of the pre-field preparation should be internet-based and how much real gathering? So if I can answer this question correctly, pre-field preparation may look like reading research papers from the teams that you are connected with. You don't need to do extensive scientific research ahead of time before your application. So just kind of give us an idea of how you are as an educator and what your science interests are. So you don't need to, stay up till midnight reading about science ahead of time. And you will kind of be preparing with logistics and a phone call with the researchers, but there's going to be real information gathering that's out in the field when you get to that point. So hopefully that answers that one. Let's see, Janet, I see lots of questions going on here if you want to jump in.
Yeah. A couple people with some twist ones that I have to think. So David and DJ, I'll try to think a little more comprehensively about your questions there. So there was one by Jason about researcher applications. How many researcher applications are typically submitted, and generally what percentage are chosen? Is PolarTREC looking for researchers, or is it pretty competitive for researchers? So as far as the number that are generally submitted, maybe 20. Yeah. I'd say on an average year it's about 20. Some years we get more or less. It really depends on the funding cycle more than anything else. And we have about, anywhere from 12 to 14 to 15 spots that we can fill. Sometimes what happens is researchers will come in with some funding and we can fill more than what we anticipated. Yeah, basically we select over half of those that we get. And then as far as being competitive amongst researchers, again, a lot it kind of is, but not really, because what usually happens is it's just really cyclic with the funding and how we get researcher applications. Some researchers will apply even if they haven't had funding yet, so sometimes those will just drop out of the application process when we're midway through it and we won't have to worry about it. And sometimes we need to find, I think like last year we were short one Antarctica spot and one just kind of showed up at the end. So sometimes we're looking for them. But if you know the researcher, I guess the answer, Jason, is if you know of somebody, please encourage them to apply, because it would be great to get researcher applications. It's always good.
And Janet, I think I do want to jump in on that as well. If a research application comes in and it does not fit what we would call a PolarTREC researcher, if they're not truly engaged in taking a teacher with them, and as I mentioned, we're not going to send a teacher out that's just plain there to be a workhorse and not going to get anything out of it. We won't send a teacher on that kind of an expedition. We do need to be a pretty clear application of how you're going to utilize that teacher and enhance their professional development. I think that's pretty important.
Yeah. And then sometimes researchers don't always fit all of our parameters either, and or they're looking for something different. So we've talked to them about other options and other ways that we can work with them to get connected with education. So it might not be the teacher that year. It may be somebody in the village that they're working at or out of a location. We just encourage, if you do have a researcher that's interested in more about PolarTREC, please send them our way and we'll work with them one-on-one to figure out what their needs are and how to best address it. And then, let's see, there was a question. Well, there are a couple of questions, individual ones. If you're an informal educator and like a couple of people are online and you're trying to fill out the first sections of the application, just do the best you can. I don't have that in front of me right now, so I can't look specifically at the application and tell you how to address it. They're usually informal educators. We just need to know what grades or which groups you're working with, and if you don't have school demographics, obviously put zeros in there. Try not to leave them blank. Just put zeros, that way we know you looked at the question and didn't skip the question, or put non-applicable where you need to, things like that, to just kind of let us know where that you didn't just skip the question altogether.
I'd also suggest to people with those kinds of individual questions, head out to the PolarTREC website and take a look at some of the teachers that have been out in the field. Alex Eilers is a great informal educator that has gone out into the field with us, and she would be happy to chat with you. So you could send her a question through Ask the Team, or if you do have those individual questions, we could send you to one of those PolarTREC mentors and alumni that might be able to help.
Oh, Alex Eilers, I'll spell it. Alex Eilers.
Is it possible that I could ask a question? I'm on the phone and I wasn't able to get
Sure.
on the.
Sure.
Okay. Two things, and maybe someone already mentioned it, but on the application, references asked for, and do you list those? And then also, is there a place to attach any other kind of curriculum, resume, or Vita, whatever?
Good questions. Yes, there is a space for references, and those will be, you just give us real basic information from them. We do not need letters of recommendation at this point. And then kind of when you get a little further in the process, if we're going to be doing an interview with you and a research team, we will then contact your references with a kind of a form that they'll fill out with some information. So that's how we deal with the references. And then no, we don't need you to attach any extra information. The application is lengthy as it is, so you'll be fine with sharing lots of information that way.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I just reiterated those two questions online. Some people had a hard time hearing, so the question was about references and what we use them for, and the other one was about attaching extra information. So hopefully that cleared that up for you. Okay, thanks. Any other questions out there? Phone or otherwise?
And Janet and I are available. We're just on the other side of that email address, so send us a question if you've got one, but please make sure you're checking out the website and gathering as much information as you can as well.
Yep. And I think that's it. Yeah.
All right, great. So we just had a couple of last slides here of reminding you where the applications can be found and more information for teachers and researchers. If you have additional questions, again, read through. There's a frequently asked questions section for teachers and researchers. And the archives for this event will be created in the next couple days, and we'll send it out to everybody via email that you registered with. And just thanks so much for participating. And we hope to see your applications come through in the next week.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.